All right, let's jump right into this explainer. You know the traditional one-off transaction business model? It is basically dying out right in front of our eyes. Today, we're going to completely unpack the hidden economics behind this massive shift, and we'll look at the exact mechanics of how businesses are totally re-engineering their cash flows. I mean, seriously, from your software stack all the way down to your morning cup of coffee, you've probably noticed that absolutely everything is shifting to a recurring fee. It can honestly feel a bit overwhelming as a consumer, right? But today, we're going to reveal the exact mathematical playbook driving this. Because it's not just some passing pricing trend, it's a fundamental transformation of how modern businesses actually survive. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, the subscription boom, then the core economic flip, standard versus super user models, a deep dive into the widget industry case study, capped versus uncapped models, and finally, the first mover advantage. Let's start with part one, the subscription model boom, or moving from feast or famine to predictability. Look, legacy operators across almost every industry are just completely exhausted. For decades, they've been trapped in this intense, volatile feast or famine cycle, constantly running on a treadmill, burning energy just to secure that very next single sale. Shifting the profit center to subscriptions solves this overnight. It generates completely stable, predictable cash flow to comfortably cover massive overheads while simultaneously providing extreme priority value for the customer. It's total win-win. Moving on to part two, the core economic flip, where we re-engineer unit economics. To really grasp how businesses survive this transition, you have to understand two-part pricing. In a traditional setup, every single sale has to carry enough margin to pay the rent, the insurance, the salaried staff. Subscriptions flip that dynamic entirely. Think of it like a country club. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a Costco membership. But customer pays a lump sum fee upfront to absorb your fixed overhead before a service is even initiated. And then they pay a tiny low fee just for their actual marginal usage. This directly unlocks what we call capacity monetization. Imagine staring at an empty facility at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. You are still paying rent and staff for that hour, so that idle time is actively bleeding your margins. But once those fixed costs are totally covered by upfront membership fees, utilizing your idle capacity becomes unbelievably lucrative. Selling utilization through subscriptions converts that empty space into guaranteed bottom-line revenue. Which brings us to part three, standard versus super user, contrasting the execution strategies. Now, you know as well as I do that not all subscriptions are created equal. Standard subscriptions, like your typical streaming service, rely on a massive, high-volume scale. Because they charge a low, accessible fee, climbing to that break-even point is a super slow grind with incredibly tight margins. Super user subscriptions, though, they completely shift the paradigm. They specifically target the top 10 to 20% of heavy hitters, the whales. By charging a premium retainer, they instantly cover overhead and drastically reduce risk. I mean, just look at how extreme these super user models can get. Surf Air is charging nearly $2,000 a month for unlimited regional flights for executives. Porsche Drive gives you unlimited luxury vehicle swaps. Rent the Runway essentially replaces an entire clothing budget with constant designer fashion swaps. And Best Buy Total Tech locks in smart home power users with uncapped tech support. They're taking erratic, high-volume needs and turning them into beautiful, recurring revenue. Let's ground this with part four, the widget industry case study, or transforming sunk costs into profit. So, legacy widget operators deal with these massive industrial facilities, and they bottlenecked incredibly hard during peak holiday production, but they sit completely empty for the rest of the year. Those off-peak months represent massive, unrecoverable sunk costs. Because they have all this excess off-peak capacity, they are the absolute perfect candidates to pivot away from unpredictable transactions and launch a B2B super user subscription targeting high-volume corporate clients. Let's just run the math real quick. Say you have a corporate client needing 30 days of widget processing a year. At the standard rate of 200 Rand a day, they'd pay 6,000 Rand. But under a new super user subscription, they pay a 3,000 Rand annual fixed base fee, plus just 20 Rand a day to cover marginal costs. Their total is now 3,600 Rand. That client is saving a massive 40%. Meanwhile, the operator turns an empty production slot into guaranteed cash. Since the 20 Rand covers the marginal cost, that 3,000 Rand upfront fee is essentially pure profit. 16.7 days. That right there is the exact magic number for this operator. Once a client hits roughly 17 days of service, the widget subscription becomes significantly cheaper for the user and pure bottom line profit for the business on otherwise completely idle machinery. Figuring out this exact break-even number for your own capacity is literally a game changer. All right, Section 5, capped versus uncapped models, and how we actually contain the risk. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. What happens if a subscriber uses the service too much? Well, capped models offer a safety net by hard-coding a maximum limit, a volume ceiling that mathematically contains your financial risk. Uncapped models, on the other hand, offer truly unlimited access. While it sounds riskier, it creates an absolutely impenetrable competitive moat because you're offering the ultimate luxury, complete psychological peace of mind. They never have to count or worry about usage ever again. The secret sauce behind these uncapped models is a fascinating reality known as breakage. This is the statistical certainty that a chunk of your subscribers will gladly pay a massive premium just to know they can use it unlimited times, but they'll ultimately underutilize the service in reality. So these lower utilizing super users effectively subsidize the extreme, excessive volume users. It balances the financial scales perfectly. Which leads us to our final section, Part 6, the first mover advantage and the very real danger of inaction. The absolute holy grail of the subscription economy is customer lock-in. Once that heavy upfront fee is paid, the subscriber is completely locked in through the sunk cost fallacy. Human beings just hate feeling like they wasted money, right? Once they've bought the membership, they will actively bypass closer, cheaper, or previously favored competitors just to squeeze every drop of utility out of their initial investment. So the true existential threat to your business, honestly, it's just sitting on your hands. The market for these lucrative, high-volume whales is highly finite. If you hesitate, the first mover is going to immediately siphon this key demographic away. Late competitors will wake up to find the market fiercely defended, leaving them fighting over a rapidly shrinking pool of unpredictable seasonal scraps. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. Take a hard look at your own fixed assets, your seasonal downtime, and your heavy users. What hidden idle capacity in your operation are you ready to membershipify right now to secure your future? Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll patch you in the next explainer.